So I want to bring in Ambassador John Bolton now to talk a little bit more about the hostage deal. He's a former U.S. national security advisor. Thanks for joining us, Ambassador. First off, I just want to get your first reaction to news of this deal.
Well, it's obviously good for the families and the hostages who are going to be released, assuming they do get released. But I'm very troubled by this deal. I think it's conceptually wrong to trade people who have been kidnapped, totally innocent people, in exchange for these Palestinian prisoners who are by and large criminals, people who have conducted, in many cases, violent assaults on other innocent people. At a ratio of 3 to 1, for every innocent person released, 3 criminals are going to be released back to the Gaza Strip. I think the pause in fighting is something that Hamas will take advantage of. I think it's utterly inexplicable and indefensible to have agreed to a pause in aerial surveillance over Gaza for significant periods of time, because I think Hamas will take advantage of that to reposition, to extricate some of its leaders, move the hostages around, and otherwise prepare for the next stage of combat. And a further addition here that is to me indefensible is the idea that if Hamas agrees to release 10 more prisoners a day, the pause will be extended. That's giving your enemy control over the length of the ceasefire. You know, this is basically an Israeli decision, but it has significant implications for the United States as well, since this is not just a Hamas-Israel conflict. This is something that I think they're calling the shots on in Iran, and it has Israel simply the little Satan in Iran's. We are the great Satan, and ultimately this will affect us too. I think it's a very dangerous, and even if the terms of the ceasefire of the exchange are carried out fully, even if it works perfectly, I think it's a very bad decision.
And what about the counter argument that, you know, the longer these hostages were in Hamas's hands, and I know at this point it's only 50 of them being released, but the longer they're there, the more the likelihood that they won't survive this war. And getting them out is incredibly important. Why do you think Israel did this? Why make this deal if you think the deal is problematic?
I think that we're under enormous pressure from the Biden administration, which faces, in turn, enormous pressure by the left wing of the Democratic Party, which is more pro-Palestinian than pro-Israel. I think the political pressure on Biden is enormous. He's obviously focused on it. His own White House talks about how much time and attention he's devoted to it, and missed the bigger issue here of whether, in fact, the administration supports Israel's declared objective of eliminating Hamas. Yes, there are 220 hostages cruelly kidnapped, perhaps tortured by the barbarians in Hamas. There are 9 million Israelis who are subject to Hamas attacks in the north of Israel. Hezbollah attacks continue. The Houthi rebels in Yemen have tried to attack Israel. This is part of a larger Iranian strategy. And while I understand the humanitarian importance of the 50 hostages who may or may not be released in a 4-day period, I think that the objective here is to sap the will of the Israeli government to try and achieve its stated objective, and to sap the will of the White House, which is already pretty sapped at this point.
Ambassador Bolton, how do you see this then ending? What happens? How does this end, and what happens after?
Well, I agree with the stated Israeli objective, which, by the way, was endorsed by President Biden when he visited Israel shortly after October the 7th, and that's the elimination of Hamas as a military and political force. I think to achieve that objective is going to take a long time. I think that's what American military advisors were telling the Israeli military in those early days. Don't rush in, take your time, minimize your own casualties, minimize potential civilian casualties. But if you want to eliminate Hamas, meaning eliminating its capability to engage in terrorism against Israel, for example, one objective should be the destruction of every tunnel under Gaza, which is going to take some time, that every time you have a pause here, it gives Hamas an advantage. I think they're probably already exfiltrating some of their people out of Gaza through tunnels into Egypt or into Israel that have not been detected. I think they're bringing new weapons in to the extent they can from the Sinai. I think this pause, while it certainly provides some benefit to Israel's military, is far more in Hamas's interest. You always have to ask, whose side is time on? I think it's on Hamas's side.
You know, we're talking about Israel, we're talking about Hamas, but you know, this pause is meant to benefit the thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of civilians still left there. We've had, you know, tens of thousands of people killed. And in this conversation, the civilians are sort of, it's almost like they're sort of a side note to this. Isn't the main objective to also provide some relief for these civilians who are just as innocent as the Israelis who found themselves the victims of a terrorist attack?
How do you know they're innocent? How do you know they're not actively working with Hamas?
Because we're talking about a population that's 50% children. At least a good chunk of this population is innocent.
Define children under 21?
Let's define it as under 18. Does it matter? I mean, a child is a child.
You can be a terrorist at age 18. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Can you be a terrorist at age 18?
Okay.
Age 17?
So then if I was able to present to you the number of 12-year-olds killed, I mean, would that make a difference? I mean, I feel like included in this conversation has not been the civilians in Gaza.
Let me ask you this. Do you believe it's a legitimate objective for the state of Israel to eliminate the Hamas terrorist threat?
You know what? It is to eliminate a terrorist organization? Yes. Absolutely. But Ambassador, I'm going to ask you the question about what do we do with the civilian casualties and how do we limit the civilian casualties moving forward? Some are going to die as a result of the attacks from the Israeli military, but some are going to die from starvation, from a lack of medicine, from things that are preventable.
And some of the Palestinians will die because they're engaged in terrorist activity. We don't know the breakdown of casualties declared by Hamas itself as to how many were Hamas supporters who were aiding them in their terrorist activities. If the people of Gaza want to show that they don't support Hamas, they need to come to Israel's side. They need to help point out where the tunnels are. They need to identify Hamas terrorists in their presence. You know, there are pictures in these hospitals of the Hamas terrorists bringing in wounded Hamas fighters, fully cooperating with the medical staffs of the hospitals. There's a lot we still have to learn here. And I think that unless you're prepared to say Israel is not entitled to eliminate the terrorist threat, we've got a lot more of this ahead because of the utter cynicism and brutality of Hamas itself, which uses the Palestinian population as a shield against the Israeli legitimate effort to eliminate Hamas. So let's be clear where the moral responsibility is here for what's happening in Gaza. It is all on Hamas.
Ambassador John Bolton, thank you very much.
Thank you.